Reading the ancient protocols of Leviticus 13 and 14 as a manual for public health hygiene misses the actual architecture of the text. The condition known as sarath represents an active ontological fracture, a physical intrusion of chaos attempting to unmake the ordered world. The internal logic of this defilement ignores biological boundaries, applying the exact same diagnostic rules to human skin, linen garments, and the stone walls of a house. Accessing the reality described in these chapters requires a specific set of analytical frameworks to decode the theological physics at play. Because this corruption consumes the full spectrum of covenant life, bodies, possessions, and architecture, it functions as a threat to the stability of reality itself. The first of these frameworks identifies the emergence of a procedural civilization. A procedural civilization has suffered total symbolic collapse, functioning through mechanical administration and control long after spiritual life has departed. Sarioff threatens to turn the camp of Israel into this type of mechanical entropy, creating a space where God's holy presence can no longer dwell. The afflicted person experiences this as a state of living death, continuing biologically while being severed from their covenant identity. The horror of defilement lies in this isolation, a sterile continuation of life stripped of its sacred purpose. These earthly events mirror a legal drama taking place in the heavenly courtroom. Every contamination carries a legal parallel in the divine council. Because the community is one interconnected body, a single member's condition affects the whole. The accuser weaponizes this link, demanding the community's exile before God's throne based on defilement. Ritual uncleanness provides the legal standing for this claim, allowing the adversary to argue that God's holiness can no longer coexist with a corrupted people. We often fall into a state of epistemological failure, attempting to judge reality by mere appearances rather than divine standards. The priest functions as an epistemic guardian to prevent this, adjudicating the cosmic boundary by looking past the surface to the covenantal reality. The Hebrew syntax commands the priest to deeply examine the sore, yet forbids him from relying on his own empirical eyesight as the final authority. The law mandates a 7-day isolation period, forcing the priest to wait for a revelation of its true nature before rendering a verdict. This ensures the earthly judgment aligns perfectly with the reality of the heavenly courtroom, enforcing the legal boundary God has established. This legal conflict extends to architecture when defilement takes root within the stones of a house. An infected house ceases to be a domestic sanctuary and becomes an anti-temple, a space that mirrors the chaotic decay of the fall. Restoring order to the land requires a process of cosmic exorcism to remove the threat. If the corruption is deep and active, the house must be dismantled and cast out to an unclean place beyond the city. This act of redemptive decreation strips the adversary of a physical foothold, purging the anti-creation power from the covenant land. For the human leper, a diagnosis of uncleanness triggers an immediate loss of status, marked by torn clothes and a cry of warning to the community. The law thrusts the individual out of the structured camp and into the chaotic wilderness, a region outside the boundaries of ordered life. This exile is a state of symbolic collapse, where the person is severed from the tabernacle and forced into a sterile, procedural wandering. The leper's mourning rites indicate they are experiencing death as a cosmic power while still breathing, existing as an embodied reminder of the fall. Being cast outside the camp places the individual in the domain of the accuser, marking a total disruption of the human vocation for communion. However, the biblical narrative employs a pattern of inverted theater, where God uses the marginalized to subvert the claims of darkness. This is visible in the account of the 4 starving lepers at the gates of Samaria. Trapped in threshold space, these men occupy the liminal zone between a dying city and a defeated enemy. God uses these ritually dead outcasts to cross that threshold and become the messengers of salvation to the very community that excluded them. This divine strategy turns the instruments of exile into the primary vehicles of covenant deliverance. This pattern reaches its climax when Jesus Christ descends into our procedural civilization and directly approaches the unclean. He reverses the direction of contagion. Instead of being infected by defilement, His holiness flows outward to reclaim the creation. Christ deliberately goes outside the gate to the place of the curse to execute a final cosmic exorcism. By absorbing the corruption of the human rebellion, He annuls the legal claim of the adversary and silences the demand for our exile. Through this sacrifice, the cross becomes the threshold of the new creation, opening the way for the outcasts to return to the sacred center.